It's a new year, so we got a new recipe. Happy New Year, guys! Today we're going to take a look at a roasted maple balsamic Cornish hen that features an acorn squash puree and some roasted vegetables. Lots of choices you can enjoy making for yourself, so let's take a look. Now, I am using a product from Celeste Oliver. I'm not being paid to say this, I'm simply pimping. Just a local sharing a local. So take a look at their site, see what's available. I think you'll find a lot of variety is there. So get the oven to 375, wash your produce, sharpen your knife. Recipe's going to be on my website, and let's get started. So I have enough vegetables for either 2 or 4 people. Because I'm working with Cornish hens, the beauty of it is you can either cut the hens in half or serve them whole. I love the idea of how versatile and actually it's a lot of fun working with Cornish hens, I think. They're very affordable. I find that I'm seeing them roughly $1.99 a pound to $2.99 a pound. Just really depends. Now the vegetables I've chosen, you can change them up. I just happen to like these when it comes to a chicken type dish. And the key element here is we want to keep the cuts as universal as possible. Just remove any blemishes you see. And we want to look at enough for 2 to 4 people. Unless, of course, you want to split it down even further. It's not a whole lot you're going to get more than 4. So this makes it a very fast and easy dish to throw together. So with this summer squash, I'm just doing some chunks. And I'm going to do the same thing with the carrot and the zucchini coming up here. And we're keeping the seasonings very basic. You can get everything everywhere. So, if you don't want to work with fresh herbs like I do, you can use dried. Just be a little mindful on how much you're using. I'm going to put some estimates into the recipe. It's how I like it, so of course you can make it your own. So as you can see here, it's very simple. No fancy cutting. Just make sure that you're cutting it as close to the same as possible, that's all. And this will be about 30 to 40 minutes for this to cook. Even with the potatoes, because we're actually cutting them smaller than traditional. This will roast together beautifully. And into this container we go, and I have my veggies prepped. Now, if you choose to spatchcock, it's up to you with the hens. You can easily use kitchen shears to make parallel cuts on each side of the spine. Use those spines, put them on the pan with your acorn squash, roast them off. You're going to add those to some chicken stock. It's going to give it a beautiful flavor. So, marinade. I'm using this maple balsamic vinegar, or you can substitute by creating your own. Do 1 pot maple syrup to 1 pot balsamic vinegar, mix well, and just follow the measurement in the recipe on my website. Now this is going to be absolutely beautiful. We want to balance it off with some of these spices. So I'm putting in some salt here, just enough to cover the top of it. I'll use coriander and cumin. I actually get both spices and I mix them together. You can go to a Middle Eastern store for those. Probably a lot more cost effective going there than your regular grocery stores. I actually found much better deals at the local Middle Eastern store, to be honest. Some ginger powder, definitely a good thing to use here. There is only certain times I'll use ginger powder, and I find this marinade is perfect. And you can see it's already starting to dissolve in the bowl. Black pepper, just a couple pinches. We're not going to kill anyone today. Don't feel like it. Now the nice part, this is easy to throw together. And we definitely want to put a little bit of mustard powder in here. I find it makes a difference. If you don't have mustard powder, that's okay. It's not going to make or break anyone. but I like it. I find it really does add to this beautiful flavor. So here we are, we're just taking a spoon. The goal is to be able to dissolve the spices. We know that it's not going to mix very well with the oil and the vinegar. That's okay. But I want to dissolve everything as best as I can. Look at that color. It's gorgeous. And it's not as perfumey as some might think, but it does give you these beautiful flavors. It's like perfect for wintertime. That is, if you're having wintertime. I'm not feeling it. So just going around the bowl and making sure I got everything mixed together. And at this point, we can go ahead and marinate the hens. We want to toss to coat and try to get this marinated for up to an hour minimum. You can certainly marinate overnight, but if you're running a little tight, you can definitely do an hour, or you can do this overnight in the fridge. It's entirely up to you. Now we're getting both of these hens in here, and you can see it's already coating very well. Now you definitely want to get some of this marinade inside, under the skin and all over that meat, so you can go ahead and just grab that same spoon some of the mixture in there, and get your fingers in there if you have to just separate the skin a little bit, and massage that in so you can go and get that thing flavored beautifully. And it doesn't take long. That's why you can do it up to an hour if you're cooking that night. It's just perfect timing. So with this, marinate in the bowl, cover it with saran wrap. Do not do more than an hour. You can do 2, but it's just better to keep the time frame in place. Make sure you pull the hens out of the fridge if you decide to do overnight. You want to get them to room temperature so you can roast those off. So we're going to go back to those vegetables that we already prepped. We've got a roasting pan here. I'm putting in some fresh thyme and rosemary. We're going to use some olive oil. And just a few spices are going into this, nothing fancy. Ultimately, we're going to just do everything in here. We're going to put the salt. And we're also going to just toss everything in. And eventually, once I put all the spices in this thing, I'm just going to toss the coat. I want everything to get kissed with the olive oil and the seasonings I'm putting in that pan. I'm telling you, this is so flippin' easy. This is probably one of the easiest things I can pull together here. And there's so much flavor with so very little. That's the best part about this. So I'm just breaking up some more thyme. I definitely want to emphasize you don't have to do fresh. If you've got dried and it's easier to get, go for it. I just happen to have found a great deal on fresh herbs. It was like, put 1 in the cart, 2 in the cart, 3 in the cart. I went a little crazy with fresh herbs this year, I have to say. So we're hitting this with a little bit of paprika. It's just really for slight smoky, little color. It doesn't do a whole lot, but it's definitely a beautiful thing. And we're going to put a little bit of black pepper. And we're going to toss this and make it beautiful. And eventually this sucker's going into the oven. Now we're staging everything because we know that we still have to go ahead and do the acorn squash. This will get roasted. The Cornish hens are going to get roasted. So this really does come together quite well. I had dinner on the table in probably an hour. Yeah, I'd say roughly an hour. It didn't take long at all. So the first to cook is going to be acorn squash. So get the spines on the same pan as the acorn squash, and that's going to go into the chicken stock once it's done cooking. The acorn squash is going to take a little time, so that's why we're going to get it in the oven before your roasted vegetables and hen. So as you can see here, you do want to get a flat bottom before you try hacking into this thing. It might be a little tough. So make sure your knife is nice and sharp. And just to simply take a spoon, take out all the guts. If you want to save the seeds, put it in a bowl with water and just gently work that out. The seeds will float to the top, and you can dry them out and use them for making some beautiful baked snacking. I love seeds. They really are a great crunch, and it's a great way to avoid waste. So we're just keeping it simple. We're just scraping the innards out, and this is going to get a pan. We're going to let the oven do the work. That's a beautiful thing, right? We're going to rub this down with a little bit of olive oil. And when it comes to roasting stuff like this, keep it simple. Rub a little olive oil. You're going to do a little salt, little black pepper. That's all you really have to do. Now the thing about acorn squash, it's on the sweet side. So it's okay if you want to go a little bit heavier with the salt and pepper. But this really does taste amazing. So we're going to do about 30 to 45 minutes, and it should be ready to come out of the oven. So grab a bowl and start scraping that flesh out. It might be a little difficult because you figure the skin right there, it's going to be rock hard, but that should make it easy for the scraping element of this. And you're going to actually smell this developing right in front of you. It's like a squash facial. And I'm just making sure there's no skin, there's no burnt ends, and there's none of the black that you see on the edging there. Because ultimately I want this to be as a clean puree as possible. So I'm just working through the flesh here. It might take a few extra minutes. It really isn't that bad. I find the flesh comes off pretty easily. And then eventually it's going to come to smash and bash time. I love it. Now, for those of you who are wondering how you're going to get this pureed, you do need a high-powered blender. You can also use an immersion stick. Some folks call it an immersion blender. I'm so used to calling it a stick. Gotta stick it. I'll start mashing this down with a fork or a spoon, and then I'll hit it with my immersion stick. Eventually, we're going to work in some of that chicken stock. I already had some chicken stock on hand, and I just made it even better with the cooked spines. Actually gave it a beautiful light oil to it. And the consistency, by the way, up to you. You want it thin, you can add a little bit more stock than normal. So that's another decision you can make. So at this point, get everything together. Lightly dust some dried herbs on your hens if you want. Set the timer for 30 minutes. Internal temperature should be about 165 degrees until the flesh and juice is no longer pink. I don't do the 185 that the package calls for. You're going to have leather. So don't do 185. You're going to friggin' kill it. Now the oven times, they will vary, so you do have to adjust accordingly. I definitely recommend a thermometer for the birds. But honest to God, it's the easiest thing to cook. I can't stress it enough. So with the acorn squash, we're going to use a little bit of stock at a time and just work it in as you're pureeing this beautiful blanket. Honestly, I could have eaten it right out of the bowl. It was so freaking good. So here we are. We've got our plate set up. We're just getting that Cornish hen right up there. Now you can do whatever you want. You can do a light dusting of fresh herbs, or I'm taking a small little branch of rosemary just to give it a little bit of green color to the plate. I couldn't even finish this plate. There was so much food on here. Oh my God. I still had a whole other meal for the next day, which was great. But as you can see here, this comes together so beautifully. And the balsamic is a beautiful marinade that you can use on just about any protein. So I certainly hope you'll give this recipe a try. If you have questions, just buzz me. And as usual, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks so much for watching.